things that aren't there anymore. Buffalo, a blue-collar town with its waterfront grain mills, produced dozens of breweries to help quench the thirst of its hard-working citizens. And the suds would flow almost endlessly until, one by one, the familiar breweries with their distinctive name brands weren't there anymore. Elaine Rosenthal is a collector of beer memorabilia. Her hobby is called Brewery-ana.
The people loved the beer. The products to make the beer were available. It was a big industry. Almost every older person that I meet now tells me that, men tell me that they used to work in a brewery at one time or another when they were younger. It's amazing. It's very nostalgic to think about those days when there were so many breweries. I think Iroquois and Simon Pure would be the two main breweries where there was the most to collect from. Iroquois is one of the big ones. They gave out so much paraphernalia, so much advertisement. I mean, everything from needle threaders to helpful household hints.
Breweries, I think we were up to about 55 at one time. You know, a lot of them went down. Stein Brewery, Simon Pure, Iroquois.
15 cents for Iroquois beer or ale, Simon beer or ale, Phoenix beer, Downs beer and ale, Beck's beer, Carling's Black Label. All 15 cents for a glass of beer.
I remember I was in the old Simon Pure Brewery. I went up to the lab, still spotless, stainless steel lab where the brewmaster would be working. You go on a trolley down Broadway, see these brewmasters on their lunch hour having a pitcher of beer and eating. You know, it was great.
They came in droves from the Falls, all of Western New York, and from Canada, to the cry of play ball and the aroma of peanuts and hot dogs. The place, Offerman Stadium in the heart of Buffalo, one of the finest baseball parks in the country, and home of the Buffalo Bisons of the International League. Noted baseball historian Joe Overfield remembers.
It was built between the 1923 and 24 season and was called Bison Stadium. And it continued as Bison Stadium until 1935 when Frank Offerman died. And after he died, the name was changed to Offerman Stadium. And the Bisons played there until through the 1960 season when it was demolished.
My father was president of the baseball club here, and Offerman Stadium was a place that I spent an awful lot of time in when I was a child. And I knew all the players, and it was just wonderful. You can just imagine any young boy today growing up in that atmosphere. And I remember that when my mother was the chairman of the board of the Buffalo Bisons right after my father died, that Ralph Hubble was brought on the scene. He was a very young sportscaster, and he took the place of Roger Baker. And we never thought anybody could replace Roger Baker. Well, Ralph did such a wonderful job.
My first year was 1939 at Offerman Stadium, a beloved palace of clout that will live in memory, I'm sure, for those who were part of the picture then, as long as memory lasts. For example, Wednesday night was ladies' night. You'd see 4 or 6 ladies come in and take their seats, enjoy the game. And I always used to meet with about 8 or 10 youngsters at the gate down the right field line. And I'd open the gate and they'd go in, and it saved them a dime apiece. So that was Hub's Club at that time.
Of course, we had very good groundkeeper here, Joe Brown, through the late 30s and all through the 40s until he went with the Baltimore Orioles.
When I walked out on that field to take infield practice, Offerman Stadium was like a carpet. That field was gorgeous.
Everybody was close to the action. You were close to the field. You could hear the grunts and groans of the players and sometimes the arguments with the umpires. It was a very homey field.
And it held 14,000 fans. And of course, it also had its It's bootleg bleachers out beyond the fences. And there were a couple of old homes out in left center field and in right field beyond Woodlawn Avenue where people would set up these bleacher seats and would charge people to come and watch the games there.
And I guess they used to charge a dime during the Depression, and that was a lot cheaper than the 75 cents it cost to get into the grandstand at Bison and/or Offerman Stadium.
There were always stories about who hit the ball over the center field scoreboard. And the only one man who did it was Luke Easter, and he did it twice. And very few people realize that. But the second time he did it, it struck right on top and then kept right on going. So that was over but the first time he did it, he cleared it by quite a bit.
Well, there's one fabulous figure in Buffalo baseball history, and that's Ollie Carnegie. And he came to Buffalo in 1931, and in the next 12 seasons, he proceeded to set all Buffalo records in home runs. He, in 1938, he hit 45 home runs for the Bison, which is still the record. This is a picture of Frank Pancho Herrera, the only batter in Buffalo baseball history to win the Triple Crown. Jim Bunning was a young right-hander for the Bisons in the early 1950s. He went on to pitching fame in the major leagues, pitching a no-hit, no-run game in each league. He is now a congressman from the state of Kentucky. Johnny Bench, young catcher who played for Buffalo in 1955 and 1956, went on to become the greatest catcher in modern baseball history, in the opinion of most observers.
Niagara Falls native Sal Magley, the late great southpaw pitcher for the Bisons, went on to fame in the majors with the Giants, Indians, Dodgers, and Cardinals. He recalls that following a shutout game for St. Louis, he was referred to as Sal the Barber.
And the next day I pick up the paper and it says Sal the Barber Magley, first time I ever saw it. And I found out that Jim McCulley from New York News gave me the name. And he says the reason why he called me the Barber Magley is because I never threw the ball down the middle. It was always on the corners or up under your chin. And that's where I got the name.
There was no other field in the major leagues or the minor leagues that could compare with the field at Offerman Stadium. And every player throughout the league loved to play on it.
Our Canadian neighbors also flocked over the border at Niagara Falls. The honeymoon capital provided them with shopping, dining, and entertainment. One such person who came by train from Toronto in the early 50s liked it so much, she stayed and raised her 6 children there. She's Jackie Allen Lodico, Executive Director of the Niagara Council on the Arts.
Well, Fall Street was a very special place because there were lots of people and lots of activity, good restaurants, the theaters. It was a wonderful place for tourists to get their souvenirs and end up walking around Fall Street and end up right at the falls. But it also was a very important place for people, the local residents, to go. It really was a wonderful time. It was a wonderful time to raise your children. There was a great family atmosphere in Niagara Falls. This would have been Fall Street going right down here to the falls. And this is when Beer's department store was still there and hadn't been torn down. The train station, Tuma's ice cream shop, was a great place. There was also a shop that made homemade candy, and a lot of people went there for their candy. There was a shoe store where you could buy Buster Brown shoes, and they could put their feet in the little machine and see the x-ray of their shoes, whether the shoe fit correctly. If you had young family, you'd put them in their pajamas at night and go and park your car and sit in that 1953 Pontiac and watch all the folks go by.
Civic Stadium, which was renamed War Memorial Stadium after World War II, always drew large crowds. We had boxing, stock car and midget car racing, religious functions, and eventually baseball, when the Buffalo Bisons lost Offerman Stadium for the construction of a new school.
War Memorial was not made for baseball. It never was. It never worked. the ball club would draw 5,000 to 6,000 people. Well, this stadium was cavernous. It held 40,000 people, and so it didn't work.
You can't put a baseball field in a football field. You can put a football field in a baseball field, but you could, because one side is going to be short.
Civic Stadium was perfect for football, playing host to the All-America Conference Buffalo team, and the rivalry was great between Cleveland and the Bills. Buffalo with its piano-playing quarterback George Ratterman, Vince Mazza, and Alton Baldwin, while Cleveland had such Hall of Famers as Otto Graham and Lou the Toe Groza. Finally, the National and American Football Conferences merged. The stadium was now known as War Memorial. The Bills won the American Football League championship in 1964 and 1965. And one of the stars of those glory days at the old rock pile was defensive halfback Booker Edgerson.
Well, I thought it was a very good place to play because you was close to the fans. Not that the fans really bought that kind of excitement back in those days, because we really didn't look at the fans as a 12th man. But you definitely had to believe that the fans kept you moving around and kept your adrenaline going from time to time. We played the New York Jets, and Joe Namath came to town, and he threw 5 interceptions that day. Butch Bird, Tom Yannick, Hager Clark, and myself, we picked off 5 passes that day. And that was one of the most highlighted ball games that I played in War Memorial Stadium, other than playing the championship game against San Diego and beating them.
And who could forget the 1966 Bills-Cincinnati game at War Memorial under blizzard conditions?
Well, we was waiting for them to call the game off because we said, there's no way they're going to. Although we knew that they'd never call the football game unless there's some lightning and thundering going on. But we said they got to cancel that game because you can't see anything. They didn't. I will always go back to yesteryear when the fans that came up when I came along, I don't mind it. I talk about it.
I say this, that you shouldn't live in the past. It's dangerous. But to visit it is just a wonderful experience.
We hope you enjoyed your trip with us down memory lane. Those nostalgic places and things might not be there anymore, but they remain in our hearts as treasured memories. For those who were not a part of those days, we leave a recorded history of happy times and places, which eventually will join your priceless list of things that aren't there anymore.
Buffalo's always been a great town, and as far as I was concerned, it was one of the best towns I could have decided to settle in.
I will say one thing, even though I came up here on a 13-week contract, I've been here 54 years, and I don't think I'll ever leave it. I just love it.
It was not unusual, to this day isn't unusual, for friends to have friends on the other side of the border whom they see regularly. And I think that just developed an intermeshing among the people, which just made things very comfortable both in that day, and I think it continues until today, too.
The special memories would be the people we met. The long-standing friendships, mostly Americans, because of the influx of American families in the summertime. And the memories are all associated with the people that you met and have kept in touch with.